Welcome to the Duality Way Podcast, where we talk about everything health and wellness related from a professional perspective, understanding the dualistic nature of life. My name is Carlo Gomes.
I'm Martin LeBrain, and today we'll be talking about the mind-body connection and how movement is medicine.
So the mind-body connection has always been kind of like in and out of mainstream media. And I think that it's kind of becoming a hot topic now because there's a lot of studies going into fascia at the moment.
Right.
And a lot of the results coming out of there is realizing that the body is very much related to the mind.
Okay.
And what happens in our lives and in our emotions happens to the body as well, and or manifests in the body as well in different ways. So I think really that the body relating to the mind and the mind relating to the body, it's kind of obvious to me, because when you're not in a well state in your mind, you land up with chronic conditions. You land up with chronic back pain. You're not looking after yourself. You land up tense. So you're constantly in a state of physical unwellness while your mind is not in a good space.
And just to add to that, I think a large portion of why we end up in those chronic positions is we tend to neglect things if we're not in a good space in our mind. And then I just wanted to also point out the fact that I love the way you defined it as sort of the interaction between the mind and the body and how it manifests physically, because obviously we can't see the non-physical when it comes to the mental side of things. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea. And then I also wanted to just point out that the new studies that are coming through and talking to fascia, etc., I haven't done much reading on it, but from what I've heard about it, I know that a lot of it is talking to the fact that the entire body is just part of one system, whereas before we've always considered it to be smaller subsystems within the body, and everything sort of is related, but it's like a third cousin, versus now we're considering everything to be one body and one family. So it's really awesome to see the way that people are connecting fascia to the neurosystem and sort of how the nervous system is interacting with the fascia as well, which is really fantastic to hear.
It's interesting that you say that, and as you're speaking to me about that, I am reminded of how a lot of Eastern medicine has always kind of dealt with the body as a holistic system. So it's interesting how in Western science it actually feels like we're catching up, because instead of treating like the body as like a machine where the heart does the heart's job, the kidneys do the kidney's job, the liver does the liver's job, it's a holistic system, and when one thing becomes unwell, the other things take strain. And so instead of developing medicine maybe that kind of targets only one thing specifically and damages others, because obviously with all medicine there is side effects, it's about sustainable wellness, because you've got to pick things up at stage 1 and not at stage 4. And so that whole idea about that sustainable wellness kind of really comes in with relation to the mind and the body, because the earlier you pick things up, the better that you can manage them, because like you were saying, you land up in a toxic situation where, because your mind is unwell, you fall into this cycle of not having the capacity to deal with the unwellness, and so you spiral further downwards. And then obviously your body is unwell, your mind is unwell, everything's unwell. So about catching things early before it starts getting to that stage is critically important.
I mean, from my own personal experience, I always sort of draw the comparison to addiction. As you know, I was an alcoholic, and a lot of the time, the neglect that I was talking to earlier comes from the choices we make when we're not in a great mental space. we choose to take the easy way to get the high that we would get from exercise. For instance, in my case, going to alcohol, and we want to drink away our problems instead of actually solving them.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of the times the mentality that comes from those kind of, I wouldn't call them weaknesses because we all have them, they are just a part of life, but from the choice to subside to it and allow it to sort of control you, that then becomes your entire psyche, and then you allow all situations to sort of control you instead of you taking control of that situation and doing what you can. So for me, the mind-body connection doesn't only speak to the physical manifestations, but it also speaks to the way that our choices in life take part in our body. For instance, when you're an alcoholic, most of us start to feel groggy, we are permanently tired, we tend to have body pains, and we tend not to have time to do the work that we have to do to stay well.
It becomes a matter of priorities. And obviously, I can imagine with addiction, that addiction becomes your number one priority and takes up 80% of all of your capacity.
100%.
So, yeah. What's interesting for me, the way that I relate this topic to my past is I've always had scoliosis. Obviously, as much as you can improve certain things like that, you can obviously only improve it to a certain point. But at some stage in my very early 20s, I went through quite a deep depression, and what I ended up doing was neglecting my training. And because I neglect my training, it actually worsened my scoliosis. Now, I've never had scoliosis that was bad enough to go for surgery or anything for, or get pins in my back and, things like that. But it was bad enough that it was causing me discomfort and pain, like chronically, to the point where I'd obviously wake up in the middle of the night being completely uncomfortable and in pain and not being able to actually sleep. So, again, body affecting the mind, because if now I'm in pain and I cannot sleep, I'm not at rest.
Yeah.
And as a result, that affects my mind being unable to, process, all those amazing things that happens when you sleep. And in turn, me being frustrated and then tired and then not wanting to train. So it's this toxic cycle that we were talking about. But then once I actually took control of that and I started training again, I started training because of my pain.
Yeah.
And I then kind of took control of that. But then there's a lot of pitfalls that we'll end up falling into. So my one issue that I had was that I would hyperfixate on perfection, and if my training wasn't perfect, then I would get irritated and I wouldn't train. So if the conditions were absolutely perfect, if I didn't have a full hour to train, to do all of the exercises I had planned, I felt like I'd failed that session. So that was my mind getting in the way of my body. So it's interesting just how it kind of flips here and there as well. So I had to deal with my obsession with perfection in order to give myself the space to do what's good and not just what's perfect. So I was allowing, and I can't remember who said this, and I don't know who I'm quoting, but the quote is, "Do not let the perfect get in the way of the good." And that eventually I started getting over myself and getting over the need for perfection, and I just trained. And as much knowledge as I had about the human body and everything, my sessions did not have to be perfect. I just had to do something. Even if it was just 30 minutes, even if it was just 20 minutes, a couple of stretches, a couple of releases, as long as I'm doing something, I started working through that. So I got over that mind getting in the way of the body getting better. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, from my side, similarly, when I started training again, it was very frustrating for me because I was an athlete before I became an addict, and I wasn't on that level anymore. So it was very frustrating for me to sit there and look at myself and go, but you're not there. And to go from being there to being there, it's impossible to compare, and that's the other thing that I sort of found was that the comparison is it's another quote. I also don't know who I'm quoting here, but comparison is the enemy of progress. Because we're permanently comparing ourselves to either our past selves or someone else that we consider to be better. And when we do that, and the mind becomes the barrier to the training or to the movement or to the progress of any kind. And oftentimes, like for instance, I see people who find that they are in a place that they consider to be shameful, and so they get fear around being in public spaces or going to the gym or doing any of the things that they need to do to move past where they're at. And then we actually put ourselves in a worse position because we've got the psychological aspect affecting, again, our choices. But the one thing that I love the most about how the mind and the body interact is obviously when we train and when we see ourselves getting better, it actually becomes easier. So I don't know if you found
the cycle works both ways.
So I don't know if you found this, but for me, once I started to notice that, because I also had the perfection problem where I permanently wanted, if I couldn't get the whole session in, I didn't do the session at all. And when I started to move past that and sort of realize, like, okay, I have 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is better than 0. And I need this because otherwise I'm going to bite someone's head off, to be honest with you. And once I started moving into that space of getting through the 30 minutes and recognizing that it was still a good exercise or a good bit of movement, as you know, now we can go on just a walk when we have really busy times where we're doing 15 minutes of a walk and we still know that we're getting the benefits out of it. But if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I wouldn't do that, I would have just said, but it's not a workout. Right? Whereas now, I'm finding that even the 15-minute walk, my body still feels better and I have an elated spirit thereafter. And I can actually get through my day a little bit easier without frustration. So,
100%. I fully agree with you. You know, as a creative, I'm someone that needs to be in creative mode majority of my time to do my job. And I find that, you know, during digital meetings, I find myself completely drained afterwards, unable to think clearly, unable to problem solve, unable to come up with creative content or even a creative way to market things. And I find that, you know, when we go and we do our walking meetings instead, I have the complete opposite. So I'm not sure whether it's people that drain me via the screen or whether the actual act of just sitting there still staring at the screen is what's draining me. So, you know, as much as I like to believe I'm an introvert, I think at the same time, if I'm actually on a walk while doing a meeting with people, it's completely different for me. So it's like the movement itself is what keeps me alive and keeps me, as you say, elated spirits. I think that's really what kind of keeps me going, is that movement. And just to touch back on what you said in terms of, well, on the topic in general, the movement is medicine. You know, we've seen so much with when we're working with people and we're trying to get them to be well. You know, people are so used to sitting in their workspaces where they're office bound or homebound or wherever they are working from, and they just sit and sit and sit for hours. And, you know, they never think to actually, you know, get up and stretch or whatever unless they need to go to the bathroom or get food. And, you know, working with people and actually doing these, what we call desk exercises in the middle of meetings, or, you know, kind of like when we're doing a speech or when we're giving a talk or whatever, and literally in the middle, smack bang, we have these desk exercise sessions. And people are so much more engaged afterwards. People are like, you know, so high-spirited afterwards. So I really do believe that the key to keeping people engaged and the key to keeping people feeling good and being creative is definitely movement. And it's not even just about, like you said, getting in the full workout or whatever. It's just even snippets of movement throughout the day keep you going, keep you feeling great. You know, keeps the migraine at bay, or keeps the shoulder pain or the lower back pain at bay, which will also affect how you think and affect your creativity. Because if you're in pain, you can't think. You know, that's, you know, if we even just simplify down to that, if you're in pain, you can't think. You know, and movement keeps the pain away. So there's your connection, mind body. So
you know, it reminds me of when we were working with, I don't know if you remember, when we were working with Stephen. And he's obviously an MC at cycle events, and he very much focuses on the 2-hour warm-up. I don't know if you remember that conversation. So
yes.
We were talking about that, and that actually sparked something in my head the one day when I sat there and went, well, it should be the same when we're going into the work day. You should have almost a warm-up to the sit-down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where you've done your movement already, your body's primed for the day. And I find that that's something that our desk exercises do help people with, because it's your warm-up to the meeting, for instance.
100%.
And it also, like we've mentioned now, obviously this is through the endorphin release that comes with movement.
Yeah.
But it heightens your spirits. So I found with the one group that we worked with, it was last year? No, it was last month.
Yeah.
And they...
Totally different from last year.
Sorry,
okay.
my apologies. I was working with that group through the Agile Transformation thing last year.
Oh, okay.
I noticed the same thing there, my apologies.
No.
But last month when we worked with that one team, what I noticed was when they arrived, they were very rigid and they weren't talking to each other and they were in their own spaces. And then immediately after we'd finished the 45-minute walk, well, the activation and walk, they were laughing with each other, they were discussing things.
It's a complete icebreaker,
and the two of them even went and had a creative session quickly.
Yeah.
And it was really awesome to see that in action.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just proof of what we're talking about.
100%.
It really just shines through. And obviously in our own workspace, we've recently changed from being specifically in movement the entire day to having more desk-focused jobs.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I really struggled with that transfer.
I also did. Yeah.
It was very it was jarring for me because all of a sudden I'd gone from, it was 4 years basically where I hadn't experienced pain because we hadn't sat down for more than an hour or two a day.
Yeah.
To now, it was the complete opposite.
To suddenly feeling old.
Yeah, I was noticing my exercise was getting less because I didn't have as much time. And then because of that, I was then getting little aches and pains. I'd never experienced lower back pain in my life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I got there the one day and I sat there and I was like, oh my word, my back is so stiff. That's so weird. I haven't even trained for a week.
Yeah.
And then I went into the deadlift session and it was gone. So for me, it was actually a humbling moment for me where I'd always had this how do I say it? I'd almost assumed that I was impervious to it.
Yes.
Because of the fact that I'd never experienced it in the workplace.
The benefits of working in a gym.
100%. or in a restaurant where I was running
constantly
around the whole
moving
time.
around, yeah.
And then we had that 1 month in between where we were mostly doing the marketing and that kind of stuff. And I struggled so much with that because we were super busy and I didn't have time.
Yeah.
But then in converse, we were also sitting down the whole time.
Yeah.
So once we opened the cafe and actually got to move around a lot more, all of that went away. So it was really awesome for me to kind of draw that comparison of it doesn't necessarily also have to be exercise, it can be your work.
Yeah.
But to those of us who are chair bound, unfortunately, we do have to make a conscious effort
100%.
to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's look at a little bit of cultural history on this as well, because when we look at things like Qigong and which is in China, and you look at, now excuse my pronunciation on this because obviously I'm not Japanese, but radio tasso, which basically translates to radio exercise in Japanese. So now I don't know the full story behind all of this, but the idea is that on a radio at schools and at companies and things like that, they broadcast a guy who's directing people to do certain exercises.
That's so cool, yeah.
So it was like a national like rollout thing that they did, and there was so much improvement in people's health, not just physical health but mental health. They've shown like a massive reduction in people that participate in Radio Tasso, like a reduction in brain degenerative diseases.
Wow.
So I mean, and there's many doctors that speak about, like, you know, if you balance on one leg and close your eyes, if you are unable to do that for 5 seconds, that is actually a sign that you are more prone to Alzheimer's than most people.
Oh wow, okay.
So what's interesting is that you can actually train through your body using balance techniques to slow down and remove your risk of becoming or having Alzheimer's. So that is incredibly interesting, and a lot of people say they don't know why, but it works. So intrinsically the body and mind are connected on that level. So that is phenomenal to me, and it's the same with people who practice Qigong and Tai Chi.
Yeah, I was going to actually say the people that often come to your Tai Chi class, obviously they tend to be slightly older, and I've never seen a group that A, can move as well, and B, are generally just as happy, because I mean, like, yeah, it's fantastic for me. I mean, if we can look at two of your regulars, the couple from France and Germany.
Yes.
Never seen such happy people in my life that are genuinely, they're just moving every day, they make sure that they get their walk in or their Tai Chi. And I remember the wife was telling us about the gardening incident that she had where she overdid it slightly.
Yes.
And
her lower back was complaining.
Yeah, but then it also knocked her for like a whole week where she was really sad that she couldn't come to Tai Chi.
Yeah.
Because of her lower back pain. So I wanted to also mention that, like, finding that balance is also very important, because sometimes we overdo it in the chase and pursuit of that happy feeling.
100%.
And I know from my side, again, from the addict perspective, and I was actually discussing this today at the conference, a lot of addicts struggle to find that balance when it starts.
Yeah.
Because you know that the structure of exercise and the feeling you get from exercise, number one, relieves the frustration that you feel, but number two, just makes you feel better about yourself in general.
You're used to the extremes.
100%. And so because you're used to the extremes, you just don't stop. So for instance, I used to do 3 to 4 sessions a day, whether that be 30-minute, 1 hour, however many. But I was generally doing 3 sessions at least a day of some form of something, whether it be cardio in the morning, weights in the afternoon, and some sort of calisthenics in the evening. And it was just too much because it's not sustainable, and then you feel completely defeated when you don't do it. Or even there would be days where I'd get through 2 of my 3 sessions, for instance, and I'd like completely think that I'm a complete failure, and I just wouldn't want to do it again the next day. And then finding the courage to go back and do it again was very challenging. And I think as much as we want to obviously highlight how important movement is, please don't go and overdo it, because you're going to do damage to you're going to do damage to your physical and mental self. And it's just not worth it, in my opinion. So finding that balance where you find what is productive and what is unproductive is very important.
It's about constantly assessing what is serving you, and what are you doing just completely out of habit now? So there's that constant assessment that needs to happen. Is this actually good for me? Or am I doing this because I'm being driven by shame? Or am I doing this because I'm being driven by the need for the need for perfection? Or so I hear what you're saying completely. And you know what really has helped me, and the breakthrough that I've had recently is I woke up one early morning at like 2 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. I seem to have my most philosophical moments at 2 a.m. And I was really thinking about like, why am I awake? Why can't I sleep? And I thought to myself, why am I punishing myself for being unable to sleep? I was hammering myself in my mind about the fact that I can't sleep right now. And it's actually ridiculous if you think about it, because punishing myself for not being able to sleep right now in my own head, like it's just self-flagellation. Like, what is the purpose of that? Because that's not going to let me sleep. So I got up and I went and I played a bit of a game or something on my computer until I started feeling sleepy again. And then I thought, okay, cool, let me go back to bed. And you know what? Like, I actually enjoyed my time while I was awake. And not to say that I wanted to be awake, but there was that acceptance of where I was right now.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling that guilt and that shame of, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm awake at this time. I'm going to feel so tired tomorrow. My head was so in the future instead of being in the present.
Yeah.
That I was punishing myself for something that I wasn't even feeling yet.
Yeah.
And I think that process of just letting go and just accepting where I am right now, actually, after I went to bed, even though I had like 2 hours less sleep than I was meant to, I still felt better.
Yeah.
Because I still felt okay when I woke up. I didn't feel extra tired. And I honestly think that the fact that I wasn't mentally and emotionally exhausting myself allowed me to feel physically okay. Again, here it is, that connection between the mind and the emotions and the body and how we feel. So yeah, I just thought that was quite, it was like a revelation to me. And since then, I feel like I've been treating myself kinder. And I feel like, you know, if I do wake up early, so what?
Yeah.
You know? I feel like I'm learning to treat myself with the same kindness that I treat others.
That's all we have time for today. Remind me again what our topic is next time.
So funny that I've just mentioned sleep and not being able to sleep, but the topic is going to be stress, sweat, and sleep, the trio that your body cannot live without.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
See you guys next time.
See you guys next time.